Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast without banners. This time we're talking about the penultimate episode of season 7, which still is weird to me. That episode 6 is the penultimate episode. But anyway, episode 6, Beyond the Wall. As per usual, I am joined by Bill Sylvia and Maeve LeFay.
Hi.
Hello.
And the funny thing is as I said in the little blurb that I recorded after the fact for the one that only ended up being uploaded like yesterday or the day before, depending on where you live. Um, I was going to forego a summary from now on, but honestly, with so little to really recap, if I only keep it to bare minimum, you know what? I'm gonna do one. I'm just gonna crank it out really quick. So we have at Winterfell, we have Sansa and Arya's little kind of butting heads thing basically coming to almost a head where um basically Littlefinger's plan seems to be working for now, where Arya short of knifes her essentially. And obviously Bran is off in Cerebro somewhere, and God knows what he's doing. Um, and then we have some stuff on Dragonstone where it's basically literally the only two characters you see are Dany and Tyrion. Um, basically just discussing a lot of the more political side of the stuff, and then later on something that ties into the bulk of the episode, which is the kind of people are calling them either the Magnificent Seven or the Suicide Squad, but both really fit. Um, Tormund, Jorah, Jon, Gendry, the Hound, Thoros, and I think I'm missing someone. I could be wrong.
Did you mention Barrack?
Barrack, that's it. There we go. 7. There is like 7 hero characters, and then some red shirts, who all die off. Thoros dies when they encounter, like after wounds he suffered from fighting a bear white or a white bear, depending on how you want to
Or as
go with the
the
terminology.
creative team calls it, zombie polar bear.
Yeah,
Yeah, calling it a white bear is kind of insufficiently descriptive because it's a white bear white.
I'm
um,
calling it a zombie fire bear. It's freaking huge.
mm, and then basically, like, it's following them trying to capture a white. They manage to, but in doing so, they prompt it to call out for everyone else who kind of swarm in on them, and they get trapped on a lake, a frozen lake. And the only thing that's really keeping them safe is the fact that the whites all kind of rush them too quick, and a bunch of them fall into the water. Um, Eventually, the Hound kind of makes them realize that, oh, the water's kind of hardened again, so we can rush them. And the rest of the red shirts die. Um, Thoros had died before, just kind of peacefully. So they burned his body. We almost lose Tormund, but he manages to get away with nothing but like a cut. Um, and then when all hope seems lost, Dany shows up, and we think they're going to get away fine until the Night King decides to do a mic drop and kills Viserion. And the others get away safe, leaving Jon to almost die. But he manages to pull himself out of the water, gets saved by oh god, I'm almost thinking Benjen. Benjen Starker gets saved by undead Benjen. Rides back off to the wall, and they go back to Dragonstone. And then the episode ends on Viserion being reanimated, as I guess you would. Like, I guess Ice Dragon is basically the easiest way to describe it, because a White Dragon doesn't really fit either. So yeah, because the the North of the Wall stuff takes up the bulk of it, I think we'll just get rid of like the more ultimately kind of minor in comparison stuff out of the way first. So um, we'll go with the kind of least important stuff, I think, out of the way first, which is the Winterfell stuff. With uh Arya, Sansa, Brienne, and Littlefinger. And we will start with Maeve.
The Winterfell plotline was really interesting. I had no clue and still don't know what the end game uh, Littlefinger has with separating the two sisters. And I was also interested that Sansa has decided to send off the only person really keeping Littlefinger at bay with Brienne. I also have no clue what's going to happen to Brienne when she arrives at King's Landing, because we know that that invite was meant for Sansa, who has no interest in getting inspiring fealty to the Lannisters, and who Cersei we know wants dead.
Mm.
I honestly thought for a few seconds when it got to the climax of that story arc that Arya was going to either come close to or actually kill Sansa, because Sansa didn't seem to want to put up much of a fight. Like, if she threatened, she said there are men who could come, but
Mm.
I don't know. It was interesting. I liked how it ended with Arya basically giving Sansa the knife, and I don't know if that's a sort of an amends thing or if she's actually, you know, finally thinking better on it because
Yeah,
yeah.
when I rewatched it, I was kind of wondering like if she had like hidden a note in the hilt, like Littlefinger is watching us or something.
Mm.
That would be cool. That'd
Yeah.
be cool. And Arya's not dumb, and she's also like a
Right.
master ninja person. So you'd think that she'd catch on that she's being manipulated and followed by Littlefinger. And Sansa's not supposed to be stupid either.
Mm.
So I'm kind of hoping that maybe they set something up in the next episode. But we'll see.
Does
Mm.
does Arya know that Sansa's not stupid anymore because she was really stupid a few seasons ago?
Yeah.
She's seen her successfully govern a group of men who can't go more than 10 minutes without electing a new leader. I think she's able to at least surmise how she's competent.
I was
Mm.
just imagining what it would be if Sansa saying that to Brienne.
Oh my
It would have
god, yeah.
they would have literally flipped a table.
So, in a
uh,
nutshell, those are my thoughts.
mhm. Okay, but
Yep. So there's enough to unpack with each of those that I figured wait till I was giving my full thoughts rather than interrupt you every 5 words. In terms of sending Brienne away, uh, I do think that decision was specific. I mean, partially made because she doesn't want to be at Cersei's mercy. The mercy of the person who just blew up the Sept of Baelor to get rid of a few people.
yeah.
But I think it was also, Littlefinger said, "Yeah, you should have Brienne step in." So she's immediately like, "I don't want to go anywhere near whatever Littlefinger's plan is. Send Brienne far, far away," even though
Oh,
Yeah.
Brienne
yes,
has her
that's right.
back.
Mm.
Whatever's going on, she doesn't want Littlefinger to be able to predict it.
Mm.
Mm.
But yeah, I do think goal is to kind of hear Sansa, Jon, Tyrion all into one place and blow up. I mean, you know, so I'm wondering, curious how that's, especially with instead of Sansa. Trying to remember what else I was going to respond to there. Oh yeah, a lot of people are kind of shitting on Arya about this, like, oh, she should be, be more understanding, or she shouldn't act this way. But I'm like, here's the thing, I mean, we know that she can get pissed off. She didn't actually do anything other than express the fact that she was pissed off. And three, she hadn't had the time, at least as far as we know on screen, to stop and think about it yet. This
Yeah.
is her kind of saying, okay, I've expressed myself. Now I'm going to step away and think about it. So
Mm.
unless she actually did, put some sort of secret note knowing that somebody was listening, unless she actually did that, as far as I can say, she hasn't had the chance to think rationally. That said, it would be nice, assuming this is all genuine, because up until us talking about that, that's everything I've been going and thoughts of it. It would
Mm.
be nice for someone to remind her, hey, you didn't exactly poison Tywin when you had the chance either,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because she was looking out for her own neck at the time. So if someone makes her think
Mm.
about that, she might be in a little more sympathetic of a mindset.
Mm.
By the way, Arya is the first of two people to quote Star Wars in this episode, so I want to give a shout out to that. And then I'm just trying to think anything else at Winterfell. Um, they completely nothing with Bran. So I
Mm.
mean, obviously, when you have somebody who can see everything, that's the way to solve misunderstandings and things like that. So it makes sense that the writers would want him out of it. And
Mm.
as a lot of people are noticing with this episode, there's a lot more obvious, this works for the writers, but not necessarily for character motivation things going on right now. Hell,
Yeah.
even Tormund mentions that smart people wouldn't be doing what they're doing. Um, I think that's all there is to say about Winterfell, other than the fact that, if everything were to go the worst possible way for Sansa, I don't know what her game would be, and I don't, if Arya and Littlefinger were both trying to, both decided to kill her for different reasons, I don't know what she would do about it.
Mm.
But oh, and also Arya mentioned little Lyanna Stark. We still haven't seen those two have a conversation, and I think they absolutely have to,
Yes.
because it would
Yeah.
be amazing.
Mm.
And with that, I'm done.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. Like for me, this was like the whole thing with Arya and Sansa. To me, they kind of went a bit too far with it, as like how close it got to, oh shit, she might actually kill Sansa. um. But yeah, it was the kind of funny thing where it's like no one even mentions Bran in this episode. Like he's just off, sitting at the tree and all this shit's happening and he's like, I should probably do something. Nah, I'll let it sort itself out. Um
I'm
like
pretty sure that's more or less what he was doing when the actual letter they're talking about was being written anyway.
yeah, probably. Um but yeah, like I'm half waiting for them to just have like a one-on-one conversation with Bran and Arya, where Arya's kind of bitching about all the things that are happening, and Bran's just like, "Oh no, yeah, I actually know exactly the circumstances of everything that's going on, and all this and that and whatever." But at the same time, it would be nice if it was literally just Arya kind of putting on an act to seeing how far this is gonna go and like whatever. Because it was half assuming it'd be a case of like, Arya's not used to Littlefinger's crap, whereas Sansa should be aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
um, so I was thinking it'd be a case of Sansa trying to reason that, oh, clearly this is what, you know. She says, like, oh, this is exactly what Cersei wants us to argue. And it's like, well, yeah, it's also what Littlefinger wants. And she
Yeah.
hasn't put that together yet. Um, but yeah, like with Brienne being sent away, I think the line of Brienne being like, "Can you really trust anyone here to
Hmm.
not have been, won over to Littlefinger's side
Sorry,
already?"
can you remind me? Was the scene in Arya's bedroom, was that before or after she sent Brienne away?
Um,
Pretty sure it was after.
yeah, I think it
Okay.
was after because it was like the last Winterfell scene we had.
Okay. So if Arya did slip her a note that we haven't seen yet, then that wouldn't have happened yet, and Sansa wouldn't have known about it at that time.
Hmm. Um, yeah, like I see this kind of just being resolved in a way of like the best case scenario. Uh, I would see you like Bran just talking them both out of it and being like, he's clearly using you, he's just kind of manipulating this whole thing, or just generally one of them coming to their senses, or it turns out that they're putting on. Of course, what would be even more hilarious is if it turns out both of them were kind of putting on an act in case they were both being heard.
Right.
But I doubt it. It's more likely that one of them's kind of just going with it, and if it's anyone, it's Arya.
But yeah,
Um,
the fact that you mentioned about her not mentioning Littlefinger does kind of lend itself to the idea that maybe they both know that Littlefinger has somebody listening outside the door.
mm, yeah, like it wouldn't surprise me. But it would be nice if like I'm the funny thing is I feel like this is one of those bits where this would have worked in a longer season maybe, but in one where it's so rushed it seems like this is
Yeah.
this is coming very late, whereas this would have been like in an earlier episode in a longer season.
Hmm.
um yeah, I think that's all I've really got as well. Since there isn't really ultimately much at Dragonstone, we'll also talk about that before moving on to um, the Beyond the Wall stuff. So we will start with Bill.
Okay, so Dragonstone is basically Tyrion's conversation with Daenerys. Um, they remind us that they're pretending Kit Harrington acted by having it off screen, because Kit Harrington doesn't actually emote, and they need to pretend that John emoted toward Dany. Um, so this is the second time this season that they've referred to John, or yeah, to John doing things that never actually happened on screen, for that, apparently for that reason. I'm going to assume it's for that reason unless they prove otherwise. Um, Other than that, Daenerys makes an interesting remark that could certainly be interpreted in multiple ways. Um, and then she backpedals when she realizes she's talking to a dwarf who knows a thing or two about being little. So I do like that, no matter how annoyed she gets by the things coming out of her mouth, she still has the presence of mind to feel that bit of shame, because her sister, yeah, I'm sorry, Tyrion's sister or Tyrion's father would not give the slightest amount of shit.
Yeah.
um, Although I mentioned in our private chat, I mentioned Missandei, and it's kind of curious that she's completely absent. I mean, I know there's not a lot of time spent at Dragonstone, but I still kind of felt like it would have made sense for her to be somewhere in that scene,
Mm.
Hmm.
or in one of those. forget if it was one scene or no, I think it was just one scene.
Uh,
But yeah, I feel like Missandei should have had some sort of part there, so I don't know what was up with that.
mm. Okay, Maeve.
Yeah, I also couldn't help but giggle. Like Danny and Tyrion are having a nice little chat about how a bunch of heroes go off and do stupid things. And of course, there's that thing that I couldn't help but chuckle at that Bill mentioned about, oh, he's too little for me. I mean, you're brave too, Tyrion. Yeah, go Tyrion. Which, I mean, to be fair, Tyrion is kind of like her rock right now in a way.
mm.
Right?
But I also found it absolutely hilarious that she's like, oh, all these big save the world type hero people keep trying to outdo themselves with what's the most stupidest and brave thing I can do. And then later she makes an equally stupid decision, which
Mm.
ultimately costs her Viserion.
Yeah.
That's true. Well, she didn't say that she wasn't a hero. She said that Tyrion wasn't.
Fair enough. I'm just
Oh,
dramatic irony.
although
Mm.
speaking, it would have been a great callback, and they've been doing a lot of callbacks this season to remind us that it's the same show, even though it's clearly not the same person writing the plot. But it would have been a great callback if, remember back in season one, Varys had said to Ned Stark that he wasn't a hero. It would have been cool to have Varys somewhere in that scene, kind of saying something to that effect.
Mm. Yeah, as far as the funny thing is all of this stuff outside of the like generally that conversation is basically the sequel to the scene in the previous episode where Varys and Tyrion were having a chat about Varys telling Tyrion, "You've got to find a way to get her to listen to you and
Yeah.
actually take your advice." And this is basically like him actually trying to do that, and Danny getting all pissy because he brings up her temper and all that. And the funny thing is, I said this to, I don't think I said this in the general chat, but I did say it to Bill, that it's the infertility thing, the fact that she is infertile. I had either completely forgot about that or was unaware that there was technically a thing this whole time. Um, so when
Big
they
deal out of it.
Yeah, like it's one of those things where it would have benefited had I actually rewatched every season leading into this season, which I didn't get a chance to do this year. But it was like, oh yeah, that's a thing. And yeah, like it's like brought up twice this episode, but I think it's funny because I don't think they'd mentioned it too much as far as the way Tyrion mentions it in this episode, where it's like, okay, so after you die, who's actually gonna, like, he's kind of dancing around the issue, but he's also like, he's basically saying, okay, yeah, but when you die, who's gonna make sure that your legacy actually, continues? Um,
Mm.
I'm almost surprised that she didn't make a slide at him of like, oh, so you want the throne, do you? And him just being like, well, I mean, shit, I'm older than you. I'll be dead before you are. So,
Hmm.
um,
Because he
but
knows she's the one more likely to get herself killed before he will.
mm,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, in a way, I do like that there is, even if it's not an insane amount of dissension, that there is like some kind of he really wants to believe in her, but all this kind of stuff and her not wanting to talk about certain things like that, like planning for the future, like thinking as it puts it, like he tries to go on about thinking long term, and she throws it back in his face of, well, if you'd been thinking more in the short term, we wouldn't have lost two of our biggest allies. later, of course, when she goes off to save John and everyone, he's like, no, 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 what the hell are you doing? You can't do this. And it's the one time that he's like, you should listen to me, this is a dumb idea. And she's like, no, fuck you. And it actually
Yeah,
ultimately
it's
does
you
backfire
kind
on
of
her.
would have thought he would have used her own words against her at that point. Be
Mm,
like, what were you telling me about heroes rushing off to get themselves killed?
mm. And of course, the funny thing is, he even kind of plays to her ego. It's like the most important person in the world can't be going off to one of the most dangerous places just when you might die. Um, but yeah, like it
She's
is kind of.
clearly more a fan of the original series than the next generation.
um, but anyway, I think that's about all I have. Though, yeah, it is weird that literally all you see of Dragonstone is Tyrion and Dany, and that's it. Like the fact that no other characters show up at all, even just like a side conversation for a minute with like Varys and Missandei or something would have been nice.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so moving on from that, we have the bulk of the episode, where it's
By the way,
like,
are we counting the wall as a separate location from beyond the wall, or is it going to be together?
I'd say like everything, like from there, from like everything beyond the wall, and then happens like later, right near the end at Eastwatch, and going back to Dragonstone, and that would count in this
Yeah.
one.
The last 5 minutes at the or oh did they go back? I didn't realize they went back to Dragonstone. I thought that was at the
Well,
wall.
well, generally they were on a boat, so I'm assuming that's where they're heading.
Gotcha.
Um,
Okay.
as it seems that they are, because at least it seems that they were moving on
Makes
something that
sense.
was
I mean,
moving.
they do have fast travel this season, so
And plus, next episode they're going to be in either King's Landing or just generally somewhere down south, so it kind of makes sense that they'd be heading back as soon as possible.
they're just gonna take a tour of the South.
So yeah, talking about that whole thing, and we will start with Maeve.
All right. So trying to find a way to talk about that stuff without yelling the F word like 100 times because it was amazing. First of all, I like the Westerosi A team. The 7 of them. However, one of them was completely expendable. I don't even know his name. And then Thoros kicks the bucket later. But I was surprised not more of them did. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, I really thought
before.
Tormund was going to go, and even one of the creative team said that when they watched the episode, even though they were part of making it, thought Tormund was going to die.
I was certain Tormund was certain Beric Dondarrion was going to die at some point.
mm.
The only
Ba-
people that I was,
Beric can't die until John dies again.
maybe.
mm.
But I thought that the fight scene was really, really well choreographed.
Mm.
And when you first open it to, Beyond the Wall, you see all the snow and stuff. So you can barely make out who's getting attacked by what at
Yeah,
first. Which is
Mm.
awesome because you don't know if it's a character you love or not, getting just the axe. So
Mm.
that was cool. And I thought they captured sort of the chaos of battle really well. I was on the edge of my seat, like biting at my nails,
Mm.
until they decided that they were going to try and outweight the dead, which doesn't historically go well. And us living people, we need to like. I mean, I don't fucking know what you humans do. I think you like
to,
eat and breathe and sleep
to
and
be
all that
fair, they
shit,
were just
right?
trying to outweight the dragons.
And the dragons do have fast travel, so that works. Um, and then the dragon scene happened, which was fucking amazing. Oh my god. all of a sudden you just hear a cry and see a dragon flying overhead, followed by two others. And I think this is the first time all three dragons have been put into battle, and the last time.
Mm.
At least the last time they're on the same side.
Mhm.
And um, Rhaegal doesn't do too much, um, but Drogon just fucks shit up, and they all jump on his back except for Jon at some point. But before that, watching Viserion get um get a javelin implanted in him, I was always so pissed off that that the show didn't give them more distinct personalities like they did in the books.
That and the
The
fact
dragons.
that they all look black on screen. Like I've looked at pictures of them and I'm like looking at these pictures, I can't tell which one's supposed to be red, which one's supposed like they all look black in the pictures. I'm like, can
Mm.
you
Which dragon am I looking at? But
right?
yeah, no.
Mm.
Like I mean I can always tell Drogon because that's the one Daenerys is on.
Yes.
That's how I tell them apart.
Mm.
But yeah, no. So I didn't expect to be as upset, but I like so close to crying when Viserion fell into the water.
Mm.
And I just my heart broke.
Mm.
Until the Night King decided that he was gonna summon his blue-eyed white dragon. Oh god, that joke's probably been made before. I really
Well,
wanna
that's the interesting
You're
thing.
the first one I've seen make it.
Mm.
Yes!
Yeah,
It's mine.
that joke didn't even occur to me until now.
Yeah.
Wow.
But it was so good. And the ending shot with just the big blue eye, that was
Mm.
sent chills down my spine. Everything that happened beyond the wall was good. I even liked the end with Daenerys and Jon in the boat, and Daenerys is like really upset. Like okay, so I have to remember the dragons are like Daenerys's children, but I didn't really see too much of that connection beyond her and Drogon. So I'm gonna actually play her being upset about Viserion's death all right.
Mm.
And they did, and was awesome. And oh my god, Emilia Clarke really played that well.
Mm.
Yeah.
Um, so that was awesome. Like there's not enough time for me to rave about all the awesome shit during that segment. So I really should give it over to Bill.
So moving on to from how Amelia Clark reacted to the dragon death, just imagine how she would have reacted if all she knew. I mean, if she knew that all John had to do was send a raven to Ghost, and her son wouldn't have died.
Oh.
All he had to do was call Ghost for help. They all would have made it out alive, except for Barrack. I mean, Thoros. But no, because they spent the budget on a zombie polar bear instead of a dire wolf. Um, I should mention Barrack is the second person to quote Star Wars in this episode. No, was it Barrack or was it Jorah? I think it was
No,
Jorah actually.
it was I thought it was Barrick. Are you talking about No, There's Another?
Yeah.
I thought that was Barrick.
Okay.
You want me to be the
Like
tiebreaker, Tom?
I think they were going back and forth making comments during that scene, so I wasn't quite sure who and Mark.
was it the one where they were talking about the fact that they could kill the White Walkers
Yeah.
too? Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
when they
Beric.
okay,
Yeah.
when they specifically pointed at the Night's King.
Yeah, that was
Okay,
Beric.
so Barrack said that, and I guess Jorah made a few comments in between. I guess.
Mm. Oh, they
Uh,
both ended up kind of making the same talking points, but
right.
Jorah talked about it earlier, and John
Their
dismissed
voices
it.
aren't different enough.
No, they're not.
that was my only with Thoros and Barrick. I always had to see which one had a flask in his hand and which one had an eye patch.
Well, the funny thing is, you make the Star Wars reference. The easiest way to distinguish I've noticed is Barrick actually kind of sounds slightly, not a hell of a lot, but slightly like Alec Guinness's Obi-Wan in a way, with like the accent he's going with.
Which makes sense that he got that line.
Yeah,
No, actually, Yoda was the one who originally said there was
yeah, yeah.
another, so not quite.
Well,
Yeah,
he was saying it to Obi-Wan at least, so there is that
right.
connection.
Yeah, it was to Obi-Wan. So yeah, no fucking ghost. That annoys the hell out of me.
Mm.
Face.
Otherwise, it does seem a little contrived that this one other, and I refuse to call them White Walkers now that we've established which is which, because I'd much rather call them the others because that's a much less corny name. I
Yeah.
don't know. So that one other was traveling with a bunch of whites that he created, and then one white that another one created. Like that seemed very plot convenience driven.
Yeah.
Um, ever since you showed me that comic about why Barrick didn't use his sword to heat up Thoros, that's not quite what I've been thinking of. It's why they didn't use the flaming sword to isolate the rock from the frozen lake so that the dead couldn't run over it.
Mm.
Shit, they could have done that. Fuck.
Yeah, like yeah, I even read a thing later that was like that followed on from that on the same site that was like, why didn't they use the hammer to break the ice around the
Yeah,
rock?
hammer would have helped. So you I think Maeve mentioned that it was hard to tell who was being attacked at times. It wasn't until the last red shirt died that I realized that they brought extra people beyond the 7 because one, the extra people don't get enough face time to the point where every time they show everybody's face so you know who's alive, they never show the red shirts,
Mm,
Mm.
and they don't have any speaking lines. So the only
yeah.
thing I noticed was I saw someone get torn apart, but I didn't see who it was. And then they did that thing where they show everyone's faces so you know who's alive. And I'm like, wait a second, everyone's still alive. Who did they just tear apart?
Yeah.
And that's how I realized that there were extra people with them.
Mm.
Um, and I don't think I have any other comments off the top of my head. Other than that, damn, the DM for this campaign is really a bitch, giving that automatic crit to the Knights King there. That was kind of extreme.
uh,
Oh,
uh,
actually, my last comment. I thought Drogon and Rhaegal, after dropping everyone off, were going to go back and napalm the place in revenge, but they did not. Probably because they realized that they might have gone down the same way.
yeah,
Yeah,
probably, yeah. Um, as far as my thoughts go, the funny thing was is I noticed the I noticed the extras quite early just because it seemed weird because I was counting the amount of people and I'm like, wait a minute, there's more than 7 people there. But I only remember 7 people walking out of the out of the gate at
Right.
Eastwatch. Um and then the funny thing is they always kept them in the background. That's why you never would have noticed. I even like when I was watching it back to count how many there were, I counted 4 red shirts on top of the 7 that was supposed to give a crap
Mm.
about at most. I might have miscounted some, but there was at least like 3 or 4 red shirts, and like it seems contrived because it's like, okay, if you're gonna bring more people, wouldn't you bring enough that it's more than just 4 people? Because even
Or
then,
even
it's
if you
still
bring
like,
them, give them personality, make them matter. Like I thought Tormund was going to be the red shirt because he's there for bombastic personality, but he doesn't really matter.
yeah, I actually almost thought like until they sent Gendry away, I almost thought he was gonna. And actually, no,
Yeah.
when he's running back, I was like, the first time I was watching him, like, does he even know which way to go to go back?
Oh
Because
yeah.
and then like when he tripped over in the snow and that, I was because they don't let you know until you hear the gate start to open that he's actually made it back. I was half expecting him to have run off in the complete wrong direction or something, and get killed off without anyone knowing. Which would have been kind of crap considering he's like, oh crap, I've come back from doing nothing and then I immediately die. That would have sucked. Um,
At
Granted, he
least his
does
hammer would have lived
almost.
on with the hound.
True. Like it is kind of interesting though that they do have him essentially almost die anyway because he collapses in front of the thing. And you can tell that he must have just been running on pure adrenaline by that point because they sell that pretty well. Because he just kind of, once he trips, he just does not get up. He's like, no, I'm just gonna lie here for a minute and maybe die of exposure. Um, and they managed to get him in quick enough. I've seen complaints made about the logistics of how a raven could have gotten from Eastwatch to Dragonstone, and then Danny got to them as quick as it seems they might have. Because as far as we know, maybe only a day has passed, because otherwise they probably would have died. um, and like that's fair enough, but you know, I'm one of those people that's like I don't ultimately care about like it's I can see where people are coming from, but it's one of those things where it's like I'll kind of let it slide.
Yeah,
Um,
see, I don't know the airspeed velocity of an unladen raven, or whether it's an African or European raven.
mm. Yeah, like I think the point that a thing that I saw was making was that apparently it's like 1,000 miles or 1,000 leagues or whatever between Winterfell and King's Landing, and beyond the wall, or at least the wall to Dragonstone would be about either the same distance or slightly, well, like further. So for a raven to get from there to there in a night, um, or so, and then back, and then like the funny thing is, I think that's the only half of it people argue with because it's like once the raven gets there and she gets on a dragon and flies off, it's a mythical being. You could assume that it could get there pretty quick.
Right.
Especially because there's like a really kind of funny moment almost when Drogon takes off and you have the kind of helicopter bit where normally if this was like a movie with like an actual helicopter there'd be people just kind of being pushed away a bit by the propellers starting. In this case we have a bunch of whites fall just get knocked on their ass by Drogon just flapping his wings for the foot. Like that first time, the initial force is that strong that it just knocks like a wall of them over. um, and I do find it interesting that Danny stalls leaving until A, John goes in the water, and B, she looks over and the Night King's getting ready to throw another lance at
Yeah,
Drogon, and she's like,
I think that's the thing. They were kind of lingering, and then when she realized just how much danger it was, it was like, okay, we're leaving now.
yeah, yeah. Like, I guess it's they kind of call back to it later where she doesn't really want to leave Eastwatch
Yeah.
until on the faint hope that he might actually have survived somehow. Um, I must admit the the Benjen bit was like kind of nice, but it's another one of those things where you can tell this whole season was kind of rushed, where
Yeah.
um like Bill mentioned in like the previous one where if this were an earlier season, Jamie's kind of return to King's Landing would have taken a bit longer than normal, than it actually did, where he's kind of pulled out of the
Mhm.
water the first thing next episode, and then
She Shoot, how many
gets
episodes did it
there.
take him to get from Harrenhal to King's Landing, or from River Run to King's Landing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas in this, I feel like if this had been a 10 episode season, we wouldn't have seen John get out of the water, or at least we would have kind of ended on him. Well, actually, no. It would have been a case of we would have had Benjen get away with him. He would have just got on the horse with him, and they would have both rode off. And then we would have had them kind of beyond the wall for like another episode or so, where they got to actually catch up. And then he kind of drops him off an Eastwatch and is like, "I have to stay beyond the wall. That's kind of my thing now."
Mm.
Because it's like the whole "there's no time to explain." Like there's no time. I almost kind of wish they'd thrown in "to explain," because that's kind of what I feel Benjen meant when he said that. Is like, there's no time to explain how I'm alive and why I can't go with you. You just have to go now. Um, the one thing I actually did really kind of almost get a laugh at, but did like, that you show how bloody cold it was and how he'd actually been under that frozen lake. That later, when they've got him on the ship, they've got to tear the clothes off him, and it really has this crunchy sound to it because it would
Yeah.
have been actually frozen stiff. So they've got to like basically
Mm-hmm.
cut him out of his clothing.
Yeah, considering Gendry almost died of frostbite, like just running there, didn't he?
Yeah, pretty
Yes.
much. And he was like
By the
on.
way, an Amelia Clark interview I'm looking at actually reminded me of something I was going to mention, but I forgot.
Mm.
And that is, at least it was the dragon that was named after her least favorite brother.
Yeah.
So Amelia Clark mentions, oh, of course, you'd be the one to turn to the dark side. That's not the exact wording, but that's adding in paraphrasing.
Well, yeah, like that's what I was thinking as well. It's like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Mm,
The one named after the brother that did all this horrible crap to her is the one that turns
mhm.
evil. Um, and speaking of that, I swear, either the animation quality was that damn good, or they actually had like a mostly practical like dragon's head thing. But holy crap, the close up of Viserion's head as it's
I think
like
pretty much
being,
everything to do with the dragons is CGI. I don't think there's anything
yeah,
practical
but like
dragon
the
effects.
specifically like the shot of Viserion being resurrected, that
Oh
head,
my
that
god.
that head looked so real to me. Like that actually looked like that could have actually been there. Um, which conversely, the thing that kind of bothered me was, for some reason, the design of the Night King seemed slightly off. Maybe it was the lighting, but something about the prosthetics and that just looked a bit off this episode to me, and I can't
Yeah.
really place why. Um, just like you even compare it to some of the previous episodes, and for some reason it just doesn't look right for me. For some reason, I can't entirely nail it down. I even remember going. I like looked at photos and I was like, for some reason I blanked and was like, did he really ever have a nose that big before? Because I
You
think
know
like
what? I thought I caught that too.
because
Um,
like I thought they like the actor has like a decent sized nose, but I thought they like used either makeup or CG to kind of scale the nose back a bit. And this time it looked like they just kind of either ran out of money or forgot, so they didn't. um, but yeah. Um, that aside, oh, I actually did like that they actually references like the one of the first bits is them realizing, like, acknowledging the fact that Gendry's the only one of them who wouldn't be used to this kind of weather because he's never really. He even flat out says he's never even seen snow before, let alone been anywhere near it.
Didn't
Um,
Gendry go to the wall once?
no.
the
like,
wall, but he never got even close.
like they were heading to the wall, but then the Brotherhood nabbed him. And then like he got sent to Dragonstone. So like I forget exactly where they got grabbed, or like where he got sent off from the Brotherhood, but yeah. Yeah, he was on his way to the wall and then just never made it. Like don't think he even made it out of like the Riverlands or something. But yeah, I think that's all I have for that. Though I must admit, when Jorah almost fell off the friggin' fell off Drogon, I was like, oh shit. We're gonna like the Tormund one. The Tormund one actually did almost get me. I was like, oh shit, he could actually die. But part of me was like, no, you can't die. You have to. We have to get some sort of conclusion to this Brienne thing, whether it's him being rejected or not. We have to have like a conclusion to that. You can't die, you bastard. Yeah, I think that's all I've got. So, did any of you have any thoughts that on anything or predictions for next episode or something? At all?
Cricket.
I guess
Mhm.
just to answer my own question, I think Brienne will either be put in. If she doesn't die, she'll generally be in a shitload of jeopardy because if
Yeah.
you're if
Fast
you're
travel to King's Landing. It's not
mm,
going to take weeks.
yeah, like I recall there being a like if she's there for what happens, because the funny thing is, if you look back at the season trailer, and then you take into account the next episode trailer, those seem very similar, and there's battle stuff happening in the location that we see the next episode happening. So I'm almost kind of wondering, is this actually going to be the end of, I guess, for lack of a better thing to call it, because there hasn't really been a proper war, the War of the Two Queens. Like, will this actually be where that
I mean,
comes to a head?
yeah, they've definitely been referring to it as a war, and several castles have changed hands.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Because you almost kind of, and of course, there's the funny thing is if the Hound has gone with them to this meeting, because he seems like he is, whereas the Brotherhood seem to be staying behind at Eastwatch. Um, if he is, and we know that the mountain is going to be with Cersei, does that mean that we might actually get the Clegane showdown that everyone's hoping for, even though it's
Fuck,
obviously
I
not going
hope
to end
so.
well?
I mean, now all we know is someone just has to set the mountain on fire, and Sandor won't be able to look at him.
Hey, he's gotten better. He's conquering his fear. He's
Really?
scared to
Did you
fire
see
for
him with
like.
the polar bear?
Oh. Actually, that is something that I forgot to mention. I actually really thought that he was going to like overcome his fear of fire in that one scene. Like I thought he was gonna.
I thought someone was going to harass the shit out of him, and then we would get some kind of payoff at the end, but nothing yet.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Like
Um.
I could just see Tormund like, "Oh, you're scared of fire. You're a little bitch," and then the next fight,
Mm.
he's like, "I'll show you a little bitch."
Yeah. Yeah, I am actually surprised that no one bitched at him for not doing anything. Um,
Right.
now that I think about it, like no one had a go at him for not doing anything. I mean, they all know he has a
Yeah.
fear of fire, but like, it seemed like it would have been nice if he'd at least attempted, considering him and Thoros have actually been not so much getting close, but as close as a friend you could get to with the Hound. Anyway. uh, um, but yeah, like sort of best slash worst case scenario, the next episode may actually end in the death of. I'm gonna have to say if it's gonna be anyone that's gonna lose, it's gonna be Cersei who loses. So we
Oh yeah.
may if this war between the two is not dragged out to next season, um, which ultimately I think it actually could be at this point because you
Yeah,
don't
because
you
I feel like it'll be too easy to beat the Night King if all of Westeros is united. Like, there's got to be some obstacle.
Yeah.
yeah yeah, and it's also one of those cases where you could probably make a movie out of like the fight with like the war against the army of the dead, but revolving an entire season around it, probably not.
Yeah.
So I think that's it because I think the idea they actually had was maybe even only doing like one more uh season on this one where it would have taken longer and it would have been like a longer season, but it would have just been the last one.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I guess that's like that actually was kind of my worry was that okay, if they've cut the seasons down, does that mean that they're gonna rush the ending of the uh Cersei versus Dany stuff? So I guess yeah, this probably just means that it'll probably be like a big battle to be like the true kind of okay shit's going down thing, and then um actually, you know what? I think what might actually spark the fighting or something to that effect might actually be Cersei somehow finding out that one of the dragons is dead. And she'll be like, oh shit, she's only got two now. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is something that I can work with. And we might actually lose another one, for all we know. Just thankfully one that,
Possible.
um, I guess it'll depend. She might actually be like. Actually, I would assume that Daenerys would be smart enough not to bring them after losing that one. She'll probably be like, you know what? I think I'll just keep them at Dragonstone for now, just in case. um, but yeah. Um, beyond that, I think Brienne could die, or if she doesn't, and if we do get Clegane Bowl, she'll probably actually be involved in that. Because I could see her and the Hound taking on the Mountain. Um, in a sort of kind of a. Of course, the closest, the only thing that comes to mind as far as comparisons go is like, um, I doubt it would be the same way around, but like the Eowyn Witch King fight, where you just have like Pippin stabbing it in the back of the knee, and then Eowyn stabs it in the face. Like something kind of like that, where they like one of them weakens the mountain enough somehow that the other can do a killing blow. If they even somehow manage that, because it really is a kind of thing. If you set him up as this friggin' unstoppable zombie monster, so it's like, how the absolute hell are you going to take this bugger out? Um,
You'd pretty much need someone who is just straight up strong enough to knock him down and chop off his head,
mm,
because he's not going to be that fast or skillful. It's going to be, it's basically like fighting a giant.
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Um, but that's about all I've got. So yeah, thank you to anyone who watches this. If you have any thoughts on the episode, feel free to share them in the comments. And we will see you next week for whatever the hell the final episode of season 7 is called. Though obviously it is episode 7, which I think that is the only time. Uh, Actually no, because I think next season is 8 episodes, so we'll have a season 8, episode 8 finale. So, but yeah, in any case, we will see you next week for our thoughts on the finale, and then after that, we will probably be moving on to going back to season 1. So, I'm Thomas Fireheart. I've been joined by Maeve Bill and Phil Sylvia. See you next time.
Bye.
See you then.